Captain Arik stood at the window of the spacecraft, gazing out into the vast unknown of deep space. His mission was clear: assess the situation on the newly discovered Lithari colony and determine if it was a safe place for Earth to establish a diplomatic alliance. But as the ship descended toward the alien world, a feeling of unease settled in his chest. He had been on many missions before, but something about this one felt different. The Lithari colony was unlike any place Arik had seen. The sky was a deep, glowing purple, and the landscape stretched out with rolling hills and towering crystal-like structures. The air, though unfamiliar, seemed to hum with life, a strange energy that seemed to pulse beneath the surface. The shuttle landed with a soft thud, and the hatch opened. Arik stepped out, adjusting his uniform as he surveyed the scene. A welcoming party was already there, led by a tall, imposing figure. She was beautiful, but in a way that went beyond appearance. There was something commanding about her presence, something that made Arik straighten his back and stand taller. "Captain Arik, welcome to Lithar," the woman said, her voice calm but filled with authority. She had skin the color of polished silver, and her long, flowing hair shimmered like starlight. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, seemed to pierce through him as if she could see straight into his soul. Arik snapped to attention. "Lady Thera, I presume?" he asked, his voice steady. She nodded, her smile barely visible. "You've heard of me, then?" "I've heard of the Lithari people and their strength," Arik replied, trying to sound as respectful as he could. He wasn't sure what kind of power this woman held, but he knew it was considerable. Lady Thera studied him for a moment, as if trying to gauge him. "Strength is one thing, Captain, but what we need now is more than just strength. We need an ally." Arik felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just a political mission. It was something more. He had been briefed on the Lithari's troubled past, a race caught in the middle of an ancient war, struggling to maintain peace within their own borders. But Lady Thera's presence told him there was more at stake than just survival. There was something personal in her eyes, something that told him this mission might change everything. As they walked together through the colony's gates, Arik couldn't help but notice the way the other Lithari looked at their leader. Their gazes were filled with reverence, almost as if she were a queen, not just a diplomat. But what struck him most was the ease with which she carried herself. There was no hint of fear, no sign of weakness. She was in control, of herself and of her people. "I'm sure you're curious about why Earth has been asked to assist us," Lady Thera said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. Arik nodded. "I was briefed that your colony faces a threat. That's why we're here, isn't it?" "Indeed," she said softly. "But the threat isn't what you think." They reached the heart of the settlement, where large stone structures were arranged in a perfect circle, each one carved with intricate symbols. The Lithari people moved with grace, and the air was filled with the scent of unfamiliar flowers. It was a peaceful place, but there was an underlying tension that Arik couldn't ignore. "Tell me, Captain," Lady Thera began. "How much do you know about the true enemy we face?" Arik paused, considering her words carefully. "Not much, except that it's a dangerous force. Something that could destroy your colony if left unchecked." Thera's gaze softened slightly, but there was a flicker of something darker in her eyes. "The real danger lies not in the enemy you've been told about, Captain. It lies within." Arik felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The enemy is not just some outside force, some alien invader," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The enemy is among us. A faction within my own people seeks to tear us apart from the inside. They've already begun their work, Captain, and they won't stop until everything we've worked for is destroyed." The weight of her words hung in the air. Arik could see the resolve in her eyes, but also a flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps. She was holding something back, and he could sense it. This wasn't just a political struggle. It was personal for Lady Thera. "I don't understand," he said slowly. "Why hasn't anyone told us about this?" "Because it's a secret I cannot reveal to everyone," Thera replied. "There are traitors in our midst, powerful people who have already made deals with the enemy. If I were to expose them now, it could destroy everything. We need your help, Captain, not just for our protection, but to uncover the truth." Arik looked at her, his mind racing. This mission was far more complicated than he had ever anticipated. He had come here to offer help, but now it seemed like they might be walking into a trap. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that his role here was not just to negotiate, but to survive. and perhaps to protect the very woman standing before him. As they continued their walk through the colony, the weight of his decision began to settle on him. Could he trust Lady Thera? Could he trust anyone here? His thoughts were interrupted when Lady Thera turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. "You look concerned, Captain. Don't worry. You'll be safe here. I won't let anything happen to you." Arik didn't know if she was trying to reassure him or if she was playing a dangerous game. But there was something in her voice that made him feel both safe and uneasy at the same time. They reached a large hall, where a gathering of Lithari leaders awaited them. As Arik took his seat, he noticed that Lady Thera was now standing a little too close, her presence almost overwhelming. She leaned in, her voice a soft whisper in his ear. "Don't turn away," she whispered, already unbuttoning the top of her ceremonial cloak with a fearless smile. Arik froze, unsure how to respond. Was this a test? Was it part of the Lithari culture? Or was she trying to convey something deeper? He didn't know, but he couldn't deny the stirring in his chest, the confusion that swirled inside him. He had come here to do his duty, but now he found himself caught in something far more complex than he could have imagined. As he looked into her eyes, he realized that this mission, this alliance, might not only determine the future of the Lithari people, but also his own future in ways he never expected. The evening was settling over the Lithari colony, casting long shadows across the crystal structures. The air seemed thicker now, as if the very atmosphere was filled with a kind of expectation. Arik sat in the grand hall, surrounded by the leaders of the Lithari. Lady Thera had taken her place beside him, her eyes never leaving his. The tension in the room was palpable, but Arik couldn't shake the feeling that the real negotiation was just beginning. It wasn't about politics anymore. He could feel it in the way Thera spoke to him, in the way she positioned herself close, as if their words were not just about saving a colony, but something much more personal. The room was filled with quiet murmurs, the alien leaders exchanging looks and nods. Their eyes, much like Thera's, seemed to weigh every word, every movement. Arik couldn't help but notice that their attention was often divided, half of them looking to Thera, the other half looking to him. He was the stranger here, the outsider, but Thera had given him a role that he couldn't easily step out of now. He wasn't just an observer anymore. "We're grateful for Earth's assistance," said one of the elder Lithari leaders, his voice strong and steady. He wore a dark cloak with silver designs embroidered into the fabric. "But we must ask, why now? What has changed that you offer us your help at this time?" Arik glanced at Thera, noticing a subtle shift in her expression. The calmness she had worn earlier was replaced with a faint edge, something he had seen in commanders when they were forced to make hard decisions. "Captain Arik's presence here is part of Earth's ongoing effort to form alliances with neighboring races," she replied smoothly. "But this is not just about politics, as you all know. It's about survival." The room fell silent as Thera's words seemed to hang in the air like an unspoken truth. Arik could see that they all understood the gravity of her statement. He had known that the Lithari were in danger, but hearing it spoken aloud made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. One of the younger leaders, a woman with short silver hair and piercing blue eyes, leaned forward. "If there is a threat from within, why has no one come forward with this information?" she asked. Her voice was sharp, her expression skeptical. Why keep it hidden? Arik could feel the pressure of her gaze, but he didn't look away. Instead, he focused on Thera, sensing that she was the one who needed to answer this question. She had the authority here, but it was clear that not everyone was convinced by her words. Thera took a deep breath before responding. "It's not just a matter of trust. If I had revealed the truth to the council earlier, it would have destroyed everything we've worked for. We would have fractured from within, making it easier for our true enemies to take over." The room was still, everyone processing her words. Arik couldn't help but feel a rush of admiration for the way she spoke. There was a strength in her voice, a quiet confidence that made him trust her. But that was only part of it. He was beginning to realize that she was not just a leader. She was someone fighting for her people in a way that demanded respect. "Who are these enemies?" one of the older leaders asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "You speak of betrayal within our own ranks, but who are they? Who do we face?" The question echoed through the room, and for a moment Arik thought Thera might not answer. But after a long silence, she finally spoke. They are a faction of our own people, those who believe that the only way to secure our survival is by allying with the ancient enemy that has been at war with us for centuries. They are trying to sell us out to the highest bidder, and they have already infiltrated the highest levels of our government. Arik's mind raced. He had suspected something of the sort, but hearing it out loud changed everything. The colony wasn't just at risk from some external force, it was crumbling from the inside out. What do they want? Arik asked, his voice steady. What are they offering the enemy in exchange for their loyalty? Thera's gaze hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. They believe they can broker peace with the enemy in exchange for power. They want to control the colony, and they are willing to sacrifice everything to do it. Arik nodded slowly, the pieces starting to fall into place. The Lithari's internal conflict was far more dangerous than any outside threat. And if Earth's alliance with them was to be more than just a formality, he had to understand the stakes clearly. He had to help them stop this treachery before it was too late. Captain Arik, Thera said softly, her voice breaking the silence, I need you to understand something. My people are divided, and they don't all believe in what I stand for. Some of them think I am weak because I seek peace through diplomacy instead of through war. I need your help to prove them wrong. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Arik looked at her, the weight of her request sinking in. She wasn't just asking for Earth's help in defeating an external enemy. She was asking for his support in a struggle that went deeper than politics. She was asking him to stand by her, to fight not just for the survival of her people but for her leadership. Before he could respond, Thera leaned closer to him, her voice dropping to a whisper. Don't turn away, she said, her lips brushing against his ear. You're already part of this now. There's no turning back. The words sent a shiver down his spine, and for a moment he was lost in the intensity of her gaze. He didn't know what to say, what to think. He was supposed to be here to protect his people, to secure a new alliance, but in that moment he realized that what he was truly being asked to do was something much more personal. The room had grown quiet again, and Arik could feel the eyes of the Lithari leaders on him. They were waiting for him to make his decision, to show his hand. But Arik wasn't sure what to say. The stakes were higher now, and the mission had become more complicated than he ever imagined. He turned his gaze back to Thera, who was still watching him closely, waiting for his response. There was no turning back now. Whether he was ready for it or not, he had become a part of her struggle. And that meant everything had changed. I'll help you, he said, his voice steady. We'll stop them together. Thera's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, Arik saw something other than the fierce leader, the woman beneath the strength. She smiled, though it was fleeting, and then she turned back to the council. The room seemed to relax, but the tension never fully left. They had a long road ahead of them, but one thing was certain. Captain Arik was no longer just an observer. He was now a part of this world, and the choices he made would determine not only the fate of the Lithari colony, but his own future as well. The following days were filled with tense strategy meetings and careful planning. Captain Arik had joined Lady Thera and her closest allies in a quiet chamber within the heart of the Lithari colony. The walls were lined with ancient tapestries that depicted the history of her people, battles fought, kingdoms risen and fallen. Yet as Arik studied these images, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Lithari's most important battle was happening right here, right now, within their very walls. Are you ready? Thera asked, breaking the silence as she stood before him. Her voice was calm, but there was a certain fire behind her eyes that he hadn't seen before. She was no longer just the diplomat. She was the leader of a people who had come to trust her, and she wasn't about to let them down. Arik stood tall, adjusting his uniform and looking at her with a newfound respect. I'm ready, he said, his voice steady. What do you need from me? Thera smiled, though it was more of a smile of determination than warmth. We have to act quickly. The traitors within my own council are already moving. They've made deals with the enemy, and we cannot let them succeed. If we wait too long, they will have the upper hand. Arik nodded. He had learned over the past few days that the enemy Thera spoke of wasn't just a foreign threat. It was an internal conspiracy, a shadowy faction within the Lithari who believed that the only way to secure their future was by betraying their own people. These traitors had made promises to the ancient enemy of the Lithari, offering them access to the colony's resources and technology in exchange for power. But Thera was not ready to surrender her people's future. She had promised them peace, and she would not let it slip away no matter the cost. "We need to move fast," Arik said, feeling the weight of his words. The stakes were high now, higher than ever before. He wasn't just here to protect Earth's interests anymore. He was here to protect the Lithari people, and to do that he had to trust Thera, even if it meant walking into a battle he wasn't sure he could win. Thera's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "We will not fail, Captain. I trust you." The words hung in the air between them. Arik had never known a leader to place such trust in him. He had seen many leaders in his time, some who ruled with fear, others with authority. But Thera was different. She ruled with conviction, with the belief that her people deserved better than the darkness they had been facing. And for the first time, Arik believed that together, they could fight the darkness not just for the Lithari, but for their own future as well. The plan takes shape that evening. A meeting was called. The remaining loyal Lithari leaders gathered in the council hall, their faces grim as they prepared for the difficult task ahead. Thera had already briefed them on the situation, but now it was time for action. Arik stood alongside her, feeling like an outsider but also strangely included. His role here wasn't just that of a soldier, it was that of a partner, someone who would fight beside Thera until the very end. "Tonight," Thera began, her voice strong and unwavering, "we will strike at the heart of the traitors' plan. We know where they are meeting, and we know that they are preparing to make their final move. If we act now, we can stop them before they have a chance to finish their deal." The room was silent as her words settled in. The leaders around her were nodding, their expressions determined. They were ready for battle. But there was still a question hanging in the air. How could they trust that this plan would succeed? The traitors had already infiltrated their ranks. How could they fight against such betrayal? Arik spoke up, his voice cutting through the silence. "We fight together. We don't back down. We show them what it means to be Lithari." Thera's gaze met his, and for a brief moment there was a spark of something between them, something more than just strategy. He could see the trust in her eyes, the unspoken bond that had been forged between them over the last few days. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about survival. "Exactly," Thera said, her voice filled with renewed strength. "We fight as one. We show them that no matter how deep their betrayal runs, we will not fall. We are stronger than they ever imagined." The leaders gathered around the table began to form their plans, and soon, Arik found himself helping to coordinate the strategy. The task was daunting, but the more he worked with Thera, the more he believed in her vision. They weren't just fighting for the survival of the Lithari colony. They were fighting for the future, for a world where peace and unity could thrive. The battle begins. Nightfall came quickly, and with it, the tension of the coming battle. Arik stood at the front of a small team of soldiers, including Lithari warriors who had pledged their loyalty to Thera. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as they made their way toward the enemy's stronghold. The air was cooler now, and the soft hum of energy fields filled the silence. Arik glanced at Thera, who stood beside him, her face set with determination. He could see the weight of the moment in her eyes, but there was no hesitation in her steps. She was ready for whatever came next, and that gave Arik the strength he needed to move forward. As they reached the entrance to the stronghold, the doors creaked open, revealing the enemy's hideout. The traitors were already preparing, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. But Arik and Thera were not alone. The loyal Lithari leaders and their warriors moved into position, surrounding the building and cutting off any possible escape routes. "This is it," Thera whispered, her voice steady despite the tension. "We end this tonight." The plan was simple but risky. Arik and Thera would lead the charge into the heart of the stronghold, while the others held the perimeter. They would confront the traitors and put an end to their plans. If they succeeded, they would save the colony. If they failed, the consequences would be disastrous. They stormed the stronghold, weapons drawn, ready for whatever came next. The sound of battle filled the air as they fought their way through the enemy lines. Arik's heart raced as he moved beside Thera, their synchronized steps showing just how much they had become a team in such a short time. She was a natural leader, and he was proud to stand by her side. They reached the inner chamber where the traitor leaders were gathered. Arik could see the fear in their eyes as they realized that their betrayal had been uncovered. They were no longer in control. "We're not going to let you destroy everything we've built," Thera said, her voice cold as she faced them. "This ends now." A tense silence followed, broken only by the sound of weapons being lowered. The traitors knew they had been defeated, but Auric could see something else in their eyes. Defeat wasn't the end they had hoped for, and just like that it was over. The traitors were disarmed and the Lithari colony had been saved. The aftermath, the battle was won, but the cost was high. Many lives had been lost, both among the Lithari and the traitors. As Auric and Thera stood in the aftermath of the battle, watching as the injured were tended to and the dead were honored, Auric realized that this was not the end. It was just the beginning. Thera turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've done more for us than I could have ever imagined, Captain," she said softly. "You've given us a chance to rebuild, to find peace." Auric nodded, his gaze never leaving her. "We did this together," and as the sun rose over the Lithari colony, casting light over the crystal structures, Auric knew that the alliance between Earth and the Lithari was no longer just a political necessity. It was a bond forged in battle, in trust, and in the shared hope for a better future. The battle was over, but the fight for peace and unity had only just begun.